Alright. Hey everyone.
Hi.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good night.
So, the reason I'm saying all of this is because I'm so confused what to talk about. Whether I should talk about morning, afternoon, evening, or night. How would you feel if a speaker is so confused on stage that he doesn't know what he wants to talk about?
Confused.
You will also feel confused, right? So that's what I have been learning while I have been writing speeches. And I have been writing speeches just for Toastmasters since like last 6 years. So I still remember the first speech I wrote, which was, the first speech I wrote in Toastmasters would be Icebreaker. Thank you. The first speech I wrote, I spent the most amount of time, I think. Even though it's just about me. Because that's when I learned how to write a speech. And today, together, we're going to practice and discuss what are the elements involved in writing a speech and how do we excel at them. Alright? So let's make it more interactive, and you can stop me anytime. Just keep everything short and keep your questions short so that we can move forward. Okay? So the first thing I want to cover is that the USB drive has not been inserted. So let me just take care of that. Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
Works. So the first thing we need to find out is purpose. What is the purpose of your speech, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what you think, right? Like whenever someone tells you, hey, you have to deliver a speech, but you keep thinking, I don't have a topic. What topic should I deliver the speech on, right? You keep thinking, and then there are certain steps we can take to finalize that topic. So I'll just share what I do, and then you can also share your inputs. What do you guys do? So first thing is I choose a type of speech. Okay, what kind of speech I want to do? Is it a humorous speech? Is it more of a presentation? This is like a workshop speech, so it's not really a speech, but still I need to think what kind of speech it is. And in Toastmasters, most of you who have delivered more than 5 speeches would know what are the different types, right? You already know that. The only thing is you have to first think what type of speech you have to deliver. And then, as you can see, every other part of your speech depends on it. Ranging from your facial expressions, your gestures, what kind of sentence structure you're going to put in, and what kind of word choice you're going to make. Everything depends on what kind of speech it is. Because a persuasive speech would be more powerful and more strongly worded than a humorous speech, right? So just decide on the type of speech. Now, how do you first decide the type of speech? Again, the topic, research, right? First thing. So research could be any different, done in many different ways. You don't really have to, first go to search engine and start searching right away. I think the first thing we need to do is research the audience. Okay, what kind of audience are you going to face? Because the whole speech is about them. It's about you, but it's more about them. So you have to first understand the audience. What kind of audience it is, what are their interests, what kind of knowledge they have, and what kind of knowledge might be useful to them, and what kind of experiences you share with them. For instance, if you are called for a speech, let's say, in a seminar where everyone is a developer, okay, it's a iOS developer or whatever, and you are not, okay, you are from a totally different field. In that scenario, you have to study your audience and understand what is common between you and the audience. We all are human beings, so we must have something in common. And that is what should be the inspiration for your topic. Because once you find that common point, you can connect with each and every one in the room. And the next thing is brainstorming, right? So once you list down all the topics, you think of the audience and think what is it that I know that I could share with everyone, and every one of them would like to listen to. And then you list down all these topics and then do brainstorming. Now what is brainstorming? Anyone? Any ideas? What do you do if I have to do brainstorming? What should I do?
Think whatever you want.
Think whatever you want, right? But more like brainstorming is like a storm of ideas, right? So what you're doing is you have too many ideas and you're trying to focus on one. You have to finalize one. So it can be done yourself or it can be done in a group of people, and then you brainstorm, like you just throw in ideas and share feedbacks, okay? But you do it very fast, like a storm. That's why it's called brainstorming, because you don't spend too much time, too much analysis. You just keep sharing ideas until you think of one final thing. And once you think that, okay, this is what we are going towards, commit. That's the most important thing. Once you commit to your topic, do not move from there, do not change. That's the most important thing, at least for that speech. You can always do another speech. But what I found was that if I try to change my topic again and again and again, I will never finish my speech. Okay? So just commit to your topic. Do fast and accurate brainstorming, but once you decide on it, just commit. So now let's further break it down. Now you know what the topic is, you have already brainstormed, you have decided, this is what I'm going to talk about. Now how do you start writing the speech, right? You have to find an opening. Now this is something that again can be revised over the time, because once you finish your speech, I will explain later how this one connects to the end of it. But you have to first start, how do you open your speech, right? And you must have heard a lot of speakers and presenters saying, you have to have a powerful opening. Now what do you mean by powerful opening? Attractive? Like as a girl? In what sense? Attractive in what sense?
And connect to your topic.
Connect? Yes, that's a very good point. It has to be powerful, but it has to have a meaning.
Yeah.
It should connect with your main topic.
Yeah.
Okay, no matter how powerful your opening is, if it doesn't make sense, let's say I'll start an opening, like my last speech in the contest was, I was pumping my fist into the air. But it should have a connection with the topic. If, let's say I do that and I don't explain why, and I talk about something, and at the end you're wondering, why did he do that? Why was he punching in the air, right? So it should make sense. Maybe not right away, that's another thing. You can put them in a hook that we call, the hook is like a suspense, right? You just create suspense. You don't have to reveal your final anecdote at the start of the speech, but you just put a hook, put some kind of suspicion, some kind of interest in the minds of your audience. So it could be a fact, but it should be a surprising fact. Not like, there are 20 people in this room, everyone knows that. There should be a very surprising fact that you believe most of them are not aware of. So it will be surprising, right? And second thing could be your personal story, but it should again be a attention-grabbing story. Something very interesting that happened in your life, which should grab everyone's attention. And the third option is contradiction. So many speakers use this trick. Instead of telling the main message, they contradict the message. That's actually covering two things. First thing, in the audience, there are two kinds of people. Those who agree with you and those who do not agree with you. The moment you share contradiction, those who do not agree with you are also listening. If you start with just your specific mindset, the people who do not agree with you at all will switch off their mind and don't listen to you at all. So how do you get their attention? Share the contradictions, include them as your audience. Because you know there are people who do not believe in this at all. So you need to include that contradiction, and that could be a good opening. I think many speakers have used this. I don't know if you remember one of the speeches I watched on YouTube, not YouTube, it was in India. So I watched it on Yoku. So, and that speech was about, sending a message and stuff, and he started with smoking. Right? Like, did you know that there are many people who die, more people dying with diabetes as compared to smoking? That was a fake fact that he shared. But it was kind of a contradiction he shared. Because there are people who strongly believe that smoking doesn't kill. Okay, so you have to cover that part of the audience. Doesn't matter if it's 1 or 2%. And second thing is, you can also always ask a rhetorical question. Now you know there are 500 people in the room. It's not a workshop like this where you can interact freely. So you don't expect them to answer other than yes or no or ha, or just laugh. That's the only feedback you expect from the audience. So you ask a rhetorical question which you don't expect them to answer, but it will get their attention, right? Like something very attention grabbing. And then make it flawless. That's the most important part, because when you enter the stage, the first sentence that you speak is going to set the platform for the rest of your speech. So make sure whatever opening you decide, even if you can't make it attention grabbing, you have to make it flawless. at least the first two sentences should be so good that you can recite it even if in your dreams. It should be so good. You should not have any R's and M's in between, because that's going to set the confidence level for you and the audience. So just make your opening flawless. Okay, next cover the structure. What kind of structure? You all know the structure, right? Anyone who would like to add in? What kind of structure we do in Toastmasters? Or any speech for that matter?
Opening, body, conclusion.
Yes, very good. That's the main structure. You should have an opening, body, and conclusion. Because at the end of the speech, most people do not remember the body. They just remember either the opening or the closing, or maybe if you're lucky, 1 point. So that's what the structure is. You just outline the number of stories and points. So you have to fix the number of points. You have to count them. So what I do is, first I write down everything that I can think of. Maybe 900,000 words. And then I start cutting short. Which one is less impressive? And then again, brainstorming or sharing feedback, recite the speech to other people and then cut it short. Like, okay, let's get rid of this point. It's not that effective. But the thing is, in the body, try to minimize the number of points and stories. And when I say stories, your life is a story, right? Your whole life is a story. If you want, you can speak about it for hours, but you don't consider it as one story. So when I say stories, it means scenes. Scenes as in certain instances of your life. For example, I shared an example of me going to my boss in India. Then I shared an example of me talking to a taxi driver in China. So these are two different scenes. So I consider them as two different points. So make sure you count them logically so that you have a very clear understanding of how many stories or points you are sharing. Then there should be a very good segue. Do you understand segue?
No.
Okay, so segue is a transition from one part of the speech to another. So the segues should be very well thought of and very natural. You should not just jump suddenly and now let me talk about it one. Now let me talk about data structure. Whatever. So don't just jump into another topic. There should be a segue, a very smooth transition that people don't even feel that you have actually changed the scenes. It's just like a movie, right? When you see a cut, do you see that the screen goes black and suddenly you see something else? It's a very smooth transition. So you have to think of how do I transit? And there is always a way to do that in a very natural way. You just have to brainstorm and think, how do I connect this sentence with a new story and how do I transition it? Now one thing I would like to add here is, you don't have to have all things as fact. You could always manipulate certain things. For instance, if you're telling your own story, one sentence could be added, or one situation could be added that you have learned from your friend or online or whatever. But you could use that reference to just have that transition, right? And then it should have relevance and coherence. All the points should be relevant to your topic. Don't include any point just because you like it. It should have relevant to the topic and they should have coherence, connected to each other. And next thing is very interesting that I learned in the previous few speeches is we have to paint a picture in the head of our listeners. Because this is not a blog post, right? It's not a novel. In novel you have more time to explain stuff and write sentences like he opened the door. So these kind of things are what we call a screenplay. So you can check what is the difference between a screenplay and a blog post. You have to understand these two things because many of us are good bloggers or we might have written good emails or articles, but we never write screenplay. So you need to understand how do you write a screenplay because that's what you're doing on stage. You are a person live standing on stage. It's not just words that you are reading. So you have to understand the difference between the two. And what you do is first set the environment. So you have to explain that the wind was blowing, music started playing, that's like setting the environment. And vivid characters, you have to explain the characters. Add something interesting about each of them. And let people imagine. Okay, don't explain every single thing, let them imagine what they want. And the closing, of course, it should have a food for thought. Everyone should think about what you talked about, and it should be memorable. It should have some kind of meaning or some memorable moment in your speech. Think of it and try to find it when you write your speech. And think, why should your speech matter to the people? That would be the closing. Like, what is the actual thing that you want people to do? And then include it in the closing to ensure that this is what you want them to remember. Because like I said, they don't remember the body, people remember the opening and the closing. And again, coming back to the full circle, try to connect your ending with the opening. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night.
After Kushal's welcome, I realized I am the smooth part. So Yang is the opening and I'm the smooth part. And it feels like that all the audience are our customers and we are like the chef when we're doing a speech. We get all the materials and choose the things they want to eat and then add all the things into your kitchen and give them a great meal. And next part is our surprise part. Is because the floor is warmed up by Kushal and you can see the lights are on. So let's welcome our honored guest to get on the stage.